Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll give folks just another minute to join before we get fully into our slides. Adrienne Harrison, I'm the Catalyst Program Manager at MBRC, and we also have on the line Marina Caceres. She's the Timber for Transit and Forest Economy Program Manager. And we also have Casey Haynes. He's our Program Coordinator at MBRC. Our plan today is to walk through a few slides to review some key information about the application process, but to save most of the time for questions and answers. So feel free to use the chat box to share any of your questions throughout the session today, but know that we will have plenty of time for live Q&A as well. We're also recording today's session, and we'll make the recording slides as well as the Q&A from our chat box available on that application support webpage of our program areas website. Okay, so with that, next slide. All right, we'll get started. So again, we'll cover some basics about our spring application funding round, go over a few items that you may have heard in other sessions. So we'll keep it brief into the high points, and then plenty of time for question and answers. Next slide. I don't think I can control the slides. Sweet.
Are you seeing the timeline slide?
I am now, yes.
Okay.
I could be on
weird.
delay.
There's a delay.
Yeah, it could be my slow connection. Okay, so you're all well aware that the applications are due before 5 p.m. this Friday, April 17th. MBRC team and the state program teams will take a few weeks to review all of the application materials with notifications of awards coming out in June. And new grantee training for those that are awarded funds will happen either in late June or early July. So we'll be reviewing some of the key steps with creating and submitting your application. Here we have them summarized on this slide for you. You all are probably quite a bit ways down this list and are probably actively working on the narrative, the forms and files for your project, associating contacts for your project, and your budget documentation. So we'll review some of those items, and just a reminder to leave time to submit your application early. This will allow for any error messages that may occur, and we'll go over the common error messages that you may receive when you do submit your application, so that you know where to go in case you get one of those error messages and you don't panic. But we're also always available at the admin@mbrc.gov. And one announcement related to the forms and files. There are two documents that are required for the nonprofit organizations. So if you are a nonprofit organization, the application is going to ask you to submit a certificate of good standing as well as your IRS determination letter. And those will be uploaded to the application files section of the forms and files tab. You'll also want to select the corresponding classification for those documents, and that's how the system will recognize that they've been uploaded. So that classification piece is important. Also, for the certificate of good standing, you can for both of these documents, if you have a valid sam.gov account, um, those two items are satisfied with a valid sam.gov account, so you can upload a copy of your sam.gov account in place of uploading your determination letter or a certificate of good standing. If for some reason your sam.gov account is not valid at this time, you will need to upload the IRS determination letter or an affirmation letter and the certificate of good standing. So again, if you have a valid sam.gov account, you can use that in place of those documents. And if you do not have a sam.gov account that's valid right now, you will need to upload those two documents. Okay, I think next slide.
All right, so moving on, we'll touch base on the invitation to apply. All invited applicants received an email from NBRC with the invitation notification. It looks like what you see on the right here, and included feedback for submission. You should see that feedback in the email, in your email or the collab tab. But it's just important, I guess, to address the feedback there. So you all might have already seen it. I will mention as we move to the next slide that there were many pieces of feedback that we provided, depending on what was relevant for your application. Feedback came from NBRC and our state partners, and we asked that it be addressed in an application. I'll mention that feedback related to project classification and maximum award size should be addressed in the full application for the project to remain eligible. Feedback related to NEPA, procurement, and timeline should be addressed in the narrative, including the milestone schedule. So I noticed a question in the chat about where to upload like a work plan or milestone schedule. I think if you can include that in the narrative of your application, the approach and methodology section under the proposal tab seems like the best place for that information. And unless you are approved an LDD waiver, please pay close attention to the LDD requirements and budget accordingly to avoid delays if you're awarded funding. Again, there were lots of pieces of feedback, so we won't go into all of the various feedback points. But Adrian and I did record an application information session where we went a little bit deeper into the common pieces of feedback. So you can find that on our application support page, which is linked in our next slide. So in addition to today's kind of brief presentation, NBRC has many other resources available to assist you this week. Please note that while you may email NBRC with questions about feedback or technical assistance, we invited about 126 projects to submit a full application to our programs. So our admin email inbox is busy. And we recommend reviewing these resources before submitting questions because I think the resources we have online will help to answer many of the questions folks have. On the left side of this slide, there are 4 links. 3 of the 4 links there will bring you right to our application support page. So that page has a lot of great information embedded. That includes a technical guide to creating and submitting an application. That document is really helpful for like a step-by-step guide of moving through the GMS. It will also walk you through how to correct for common error messages. So like what happened when you submitted a pre-application where there may have been errors, like you didn't fill out this piece. The same thing will happen at application. And we have resolutions for common error messages, how to address those things in the creating and submitting an application guidance document. The application narrative guidance tells applicants exactly what NBRC is looking for as you answer each application question. We recommend having this resource open, as well as the scoring criteria as you develop your narrative responses. Our application supporting documents checklist, also on the application support page, is a tool available to help you complete the required forms and files in the Forms and Files tab. And then related, we also have some sample forms available for the SF424, that application for federal assistance, the SFLLL for lobbying activities, and the SF424 CBW, the detailed budget form. So if you're not sure how to fill those out, we have some sample documents on our Forms and Files page. So that's the final link there. That recorded application information session is linked here, also on the application support page. And on the right side of the slide, our program pages have relevant info as well. I would say the grant program user manual has it all, including scoring criteria, which are located in appendices I through L. It has information about key performance indicators, investment priorities, and more.
Okay, so as I think probably most of you are aware, a lot of information from the pre-application carries forward to the full application. So that overview tab where a lot of the project information and responses to the pre-application questions will carry forward. You are able to edit those, and you're able to address feedback if there was feedback about the content or the narrative within those sections. So that should be editable for you. Similarly, the budget information will carry forward from the pre-application, and those again can be edited. We often get questions if it's okay if the budget changes between the pre-application and the application, and the answer is yes. We actually would expect that your budget may change because you're collecting more confirmed budget estimates from contractors, or you've refined, what your project will look like. Any significant changes where you're either adding or removing scope, those should really clearly be identified in your narrative information. That's something that we'll want to make sure the state programs and other reviewers are really aware of, that there's been a major shift between the pre-application and the application. But generally small changes that are related to more up-to-date cost estimates, and just as you refine your application, those are okay. And again, if it's a more significant shift, you'll want to really make that clear. Okay, next slide. I think we'll go into some of this in a little more detail. One of the areas that carries forward is the contacts section. This is towards the bottom of the overview tab in your application. And all projects or all applications, unless there is an approved LDD waiver, or you are an entity of state or an LDD yourself, all applications will need an LDD contact associated with your application. So importantly, you'll also want to make sure it actually has that LDD contact label as a project role. This This LDD contact will show up in your future grant agreement if you're awarded. So it's really critical that they are listed there. Sometimes we uh, have questions related about where the LDD contact should show up, and the contact should definitely show up in this section. There's also the option to request LDD support, and they can review portions of your draft application, and that happens on the LDD support tab. So there are two places where you can associate the LDD. The project contact is the most important, and the LDD support is optional to request review of portions of your application. Next, okay, the budget documentation. So the parts that have carried over from your pre-application are the budget categories, the budget periods table, as well as the budget narrative, which is that text description for costs above $5,000, and the funding sources and commitments table. That's all the way down at the bottom of the budget tab. And that was not required as part of the pre-application, but it is required as part of the application. So you'll want to make sure that you've entered all of the sources that will make up your project match. Um, you don't want to include the NBRC source amount in that table, just all of the sources that are making up your match for your project. The new items for the application that are part of the budget documentation are the SF424 CBW. That's the detailed project budget. It's the Excel spreadsheet where you're able to enter all of the line item costs for your project. And we do review that line by line to see how MBRC funds are being used for your project and what the match sources are contributing to. We always suggest to do the SF424 CBW first. As that is the most detailed project budget, it's easier to pull out the information that you need for the budget periods table, the funding sources and commitments table, and the SF424 application for federal assistance form. It's easier to pull the information out from that single detailed project budget into those other places so that they're all aligned, that the amounts all match up. The SF424 application form is another sort of new budget detail that we look at that wasn't part of the pre-application. There's lots of information in that form, but box 18 is where the budget information shows up. And we thought we would share that there's a sample SF424 CBW on MBRC's Grant Administration Resources page. It gives you an idea of where different information should go. There's also the SF424 CBW itself on our website. And the one on our website has some additional guidance and additional formula capabilities, so you may prefer to use that version. Next slide. And just continuing on with the sample, we will be looking for some key project costs. First will be those LDD costs, again, unless you're an LDD, an entity of state, or you have an approved LDD waiver. We'll be looking for the LDD costs in your budget, and they should be labeled so that we can easily find them. They should go in category 6 under consultants, and they should be entered according to the formula that we have for grant administration services. That's $8,000 for projects requesting less than $400,000 from MBRC, or 2% of the requested amount above $400,000. And similarly, the NEPA costs should be a line item in your budget, also in category 6. Um, so projects, can have a varying amount that they've set aside to complete NEPA information collection. If your project is likely to fall into a categorical exclusion, you may enter $0 or you may enter a small budget as a placeholder in case there is some information that needs to be collected. Categorical exclusion plus a Section 106 review. This is primarily applicable to projects that may impact historical structures. And so you want to set some funds aside for any documentation that may be required as part of a historical review. And finally, a more robust budget if your project includes extensive construction or in the ground disturbance. You'll want to include a more significant budget for that. Certainly, if you over budget, we can do a budget correction later on in the project. This is just to ensure that these funds are available early in the process to complete the NEPA review. And these are just some sort of common issues or errors with the 424 CBW that line item descriptions may be missing. So we're really looking that each of the costs has a description associated with it. The estimated total costs are equal to the sum of the contributions from all shares. So each of the columns, essentially, we're going to be looking to make sure that the column for the HUD amount, which is actually the NBRC share, matches the amount you're requesting from NBRC, and that all of the columns associated with match are equal to the amount of match that you're providing to the project. We're also looking to make sure that the project is meeting the minimum match requirement. And we're also looking to make sure that the project stays within the federal funding ceiling, so that 80% federal funding ceiling. And we'll also be looking across all of the budget documents to make sure that these amounts align so that the budget periods table, the 424 CBW, and the other documentation that the amounts are consistent.
Okay, so earlier in this presentation, we mentioned that one common piece of feedback is that the budget narrative needs more detail. The budget narrative is used to help describe and justify the costs listed in the budget periods table and at the application phase, also the SF 424 CBW detailed budget. And the narrative should provide enough information for reviewers to understand exactly how NBRC funds will be spent. All expenses over $5,000 should be listed with a description of the cost and an explanation of how the cost was determined. So clarify for us which parts of your budget are estimates, whether based on quotes or a fixed price. Note that for any contractual work, you'll be required to follow federal procurement requirements if your project is awarded. More information about procurement can be found in our compliance manual on our forms and files resources page. So if you're curious about what the procurement process looks like, you can do a deeper dive there. We don't recommend identifying specific contractors prior to an application because that procurement process will need to be followed. So any mention of contractors identified will flag for NBRC that services may have been procured prior to application submission. And that, we want to make sure that folks are not committing any NBRC funds because we will not be able to reimburse you for funds committed or expended prior to our award and issuance of a notice to proceed. Like all of these budget pieces, the budget narrative should be supportive of and consistent with all of the other budget information. So aligned with the budget periods table, that detailed 424 CBW, and the SF 424 application for federal assistance, and the match commitments table on the budget tab as well. Lots more information in our budgets workshop. This is a set of slides on our application support page that goes really deeply into all of the budget information that's asked for at the application stage. Moving on to the proposal tab, this is where the technical proposal questions are located. Again, a great resource for these is the application narrative guidance. This proposal tab will be all new information, so nothing is carried in here from the pre-application. Be sure to save often as you work through the questions. Use your application feedback, the grant program user manual, scoring criteria, and the narrative guidance that we provide. We mentioned this in our information session, but you may feel like some questions in the proposal tab solicit redundant responses. We encourage you to use this tab to build on the information submitted at time of pre-application. Please don't copy and paste the information from the overview tab into the proposal tab. That just means we'll have to read the same thing twice. So again, consider the feedback provided in your invitation to apply and use this space to add more detail about the individual tasks you intend to complete in order for your project to be successful. Again, helpful to have the scoring criteria and narrative guidance open as you complete these questions. You might wish to prepare responses in a Word document and then copy and paste those into the GMS. If you do so, please be aware of that common error message you might have run into at pre-application where there's invisible characters counted. So we do have a resolution for that common error message in our creating and submitting an application guidance document. So if you do run into that, go to that guidance document and it will give you instructions for resolving the error. And there's a workshop for the technical proposal as well. So slides are on the application support page. And we go into a deep dive of each of the proposal questions and how we recommend addressing them. Finally, our forms and files. NBRC has that supporting document checklist that's available for folks to download and complete. It's got some information, templates, sample forms on how to complete these. You do not need to submit our application supporting documents checklist with your application. It's really just a tool to help guide you through the various required forms. On the forms and files tab, there are 3 sections: the application files, the supporting documents checklist, not to be confused with NBRC's tool that's named the same thing, and then the forms section. The application files section is a place to upload documentation in addition to those documents listed in the supporting documents checklist and the all forms sections. Please be sure to give your file a descriptive name here and to help, which will help the reviewer understand what you've provided. Examples of optional supporting documentation you may want to include here are cost estimates or maybe a second project location map. The supporting documents checklist section of the GMS contains the bulk of the required documents you'll need to submit. and NBRC's checklist will walk you through each of those. Again, samples are available on the NBRC resources page, and helpful information is listed in the NBRC checklist. Be sure that your authorized official is the one signing any forms that require a signature. We will be checking for that, and if the forms are not signed by your authorized official, we will need to send them back to you to have your authorized official sign. So you have the authorized official resolution that tells us who that authorized official is, and your organization profile in the GMS also has an assigned authorized official. All of those should match up and align with the signatures on forms. There's a workshop for the forms and files and checklists. That's also on our application support page. And again, we'll go into more detail about each of the supporting documents that are required. So lots of resources there. NBRC and our state partners each review and score applications using the scoring criteria found in the grant program's user manual. For Catalyst, each state has developed their own set of scoring criteria. So if you're a Catalyst applicant, you should be paying attention to both the state scoring criteria where your project is located and NBRC's scoring criteria. For the Forest Economy and Timber for Transit programs, NBRC and all 4 states review and score proposals based on one set of scoring criteria. So you'll find the Forest Economy and Timber for Transit scoring criteria in the grant program user manual as well. Again, just one for each program. In the small lettering here, we also mentioned that we have an advisory board that actually serves both the Forest Economy and Timber for Transit programs. It's a panel of experts that help provide NBRC and our state partners insights to inform our evaluation and scoring. So these folks know a lot about wood products and wood product markets. And they're not scoring proposals, but reviewing and providing feedback to us as we review. There was a similar slide to this one at the very beginning of the presentation, but these are our helpful pro tips as you develop your application. We covered all of these during today's presentation. First, review and address that pre-application feedback, review our application resources, be clear and concise and streamline budget development, again, by using the 424 CBW first, and then inputting numbers into the GMS budget periods table and the match commitments table. Identify forms and files that are required for your project and have those signed by your authorized official. And finally, save and submit early if you can. Another page of resources here, all were covered during today's session. And that brings us to our questions Q&A segment. So I have not had eyes on the chat. I know there were lots of questions about forms and files, so apologies I couldn't kind of navigate to those forms while I had the slides up. So I figure if those still aren't answered.
Through most of the most of the questions, so we can probably skip to live Q&A if you want.
Okay. Awesome. I have a City of Newport hand up. I'm not sure what your name is. Go ahead. City of Newport. I see that you're unmuted, but I can't hear anything. We will come back to you, or feel free to pop your question in the chat. So I'll move over at this point to Cole Traeger. Your hand is up.
Thanks. I read the template document for the project maps section in Forms and Files and spoke to our LDD contact, but I'm still a little confused about what's required for non-construction projects, or what kind of maps or supplemental materials need to be in there for non-infrastructure projects.
Can you give us a quick summary of what your project is?
It's a tourism-based project with like cuisine trails, or so it's like a culinary tourism project.
Okay, so we would be looking for where the project activities are occurring. So think about where NBRC dollars are being spent when you map out your project. Does that help?
Yeah, I guess I was mostly confused because in a previous iteration of the project, I thought, I might be misunderstanding this, but I thought the New York program staff had told me that we needed to submit some additional maps about like flood risk and things that would maybe be more construction oriented, but this is mostly a more ephemeral topic, right? Like this is mostly like marketing. And so I guess I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be missing something by not including like construction related mapping.
No, I think you're spot on. The like a flood map or something would be great for a project that is doing construction. I think if you're doing marketing work, just show us where you plan to spend the dollars. You could even identify like the tourism points that you expect to benefit, but primarily what we're looking for is where the NBRC funding is going. Chris.
Hi, thanks for answering these questions. I have a map question also, and we have a project across many counties, workforce development and business technical assistance. Would a map that essentially highlights like all the counties that we're working in, say with like a red border and then a star at offices we're gonna do activities in, is that a map that sounds suitable?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Chris. So you have in your locations tab various counties where the project is actively doing work. And then you're choosing in your map to show those counties, but also starring the locations where NBRC will invest in maybe workforce or administration of the project. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, and then we're doing some like individualized assistance with people in the counties, but we haven't recruited them yet. So that's why kind of just highlighting the whole county as a location.
Yeah, and then I think using a central point where most of the work will occur within those counties is helpful for us.
Okay, perfect.
One thing
Thank you.
what we look for with the maps is for what is mapped to align with what you've identified in the locations tab as where you're doing work. So for everyone, just keep that in mind as you work through the project maps. All right, City of Newport. I'm still not able to hear you folks.
Just 1 second.
Oh, there we go.
We apologize for the technical difficulty. I may have missed this. when we talk about minor versus major budget adjustments, between the pre-app and the final application, I didn't change any of the actual overall expense figures. However, I would like to recategorize some of these expenses in a significant manner. For example, engineering was put under indirect category, and I would like to move that into the construction portion of it. Is that going to create any issue for you folks?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Really, when we say like no big budget changes, it's like if you ask for $1 million at pre-application and then you ask for 3 million at application, that would raise red flags for us. But I think if you're moving things around within your budget, we know that from pre-application to application, you get more information to refine. So all good.
Thank you very much.
Heidi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. I have a few questions. So I wanted to understand better the option within the budget building to put in pending grants that you are uncertain of and how that plays out. So if you don't know by the time you're awarded, then you wouldn't get a notice to proceed until you knew, or you backed away from the other grant?
So we look for all match to be committed before we allow access to NBRC funding via that notice to proceed. So I think in your application, if you can, if you know when you would be notified of that other funding, you could put a date in, but it doesn't impact you to have pending match at the application stage. We understand that not all match will be committed at application.
So if there was an award and we wanted to back away from the other pending application that wasn't gonna, we wouldn't know for several months, we could take that out of our budget and get our notice to proceed.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding. So you're saying that you have a potential source of match that you are applying for in tandem with NBRC application, but that you may not need it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So ours is a compilation of several smaller projects being viewed as one large project. I think you've given me enough to go on. We wouldn't be able to get a notice to proceed until we had a commitment from that other grant.
Right.
Okay, I think that gives me enough to make our decision about that.
Okay.
I wanted to just confirm the Vermont Congressional District. Is it VT-001?
Sorry, can you say that again?
The Vermont Congressional District. There's only one. We typically just put in VT.
I'm not sure. Adrian, do you know the answer to that? Oh, Casey, yeah.
I'll just, yeah, either one is fine, 001 or VT. It's easy for us to know as well which one you're talking about.
Okay, I was hoping you'd say that. Okay.
Thanks, great
And
question.
I've looked through the guidance, but there's a question on the assurances for construction projects, number 19, that asks about that federal act. Is this funding covered by that? EO 12372. What is the answer there?
Sorry, is that the assurances form or the SF424 application?
Well, I wrote down assurances, but I might have put down the
I
wrong
think it's the
thing. Either one.
application. Yeah, I think
Pardon?
it's the application, so the SF424 application for federal assistance. And everyone can select C, so the program is not covered by the
Perfect.
EO 12372. And that is again an example of you can go through the sample SF424 form on our website, which is towards the bottom of our grant administration resources webpage. And it goes question by question to give you the suggested responses.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jennifer.
Thank you. I just want to confirm that there are, for our last grant, we didn't use the grant management system, so the system's a little bit new to us. But there are a couple of forms that we actually fill out on the grant management system, like the lobbying form.
Mhm.
Disclosure of lobbying. We don't fill it out, sign it, and then upload it. We actually do it through the system. Is that
Right, those ones
accurate?
are done, right. Those, what's it called at the bottom of the forms and files page? It's just the all forms section. So it's
Yeah, there's
the
a couple
application
that
for
are
federal
mandatory.
assistance. Yep, the assurances and the disclosure of lobbying activities are all done within the GMS. So you do not need to upload those separately.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? I see Adrienne typing furiously for the RLF question. If you are applying for a revolving loan fund, you would be applying for, sorry, Adrienne, feel free to continue typing your answer, but if you're applying for funding to administer a revolving loan fund, that would be its own project. If you're applying for a grant from NBRC, you're just applying for NBRC funds to do your project. That makes sense. So I think it should be very clear if you are applying for RLF funding.
It's not a separate loan program. It's a
Right.
project that is a revolving loan fund.
Thank you. It's a better way to put it. All right. Is it Ilana?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Solana rhymes with iguana. I just, you may have answered this already, and if so, I apologize. I was reading through the guidance for the technical proposal, and it seemed like two sections, the project readiness, but maybe I'm just confused between the scoring. But the project, the first part of the technical proposal and the last both seem to ask for the timeline and milestones. And I wasn't sure if those were different schedules, the same schedule, if we should just attach a schedule and reference them, or if you're looking for different things in those sections. Thank you.
I would say that a lot of times a milestone schedule and a timeline end up being the same thing. Really, what we're looking for in terms of milestones are the sort of major components or stages to the project. So we'd be looking for you to anticipate when you would begin certain components of your project that align with the major tasks of your project or activities of your project. And the timeline, we look for you to understand like the program requirements related to NEPA, the notice to proceed, and the 3-year project period. So a lot of times they're sort of melded into one, but you certainly could separate them out. But when we refer to milestones, we're looking for those kind of major project stages or steps that you've outlined in some of your narrative, and to kind of give us an idea how you're sequencing them. And then the timeline, we're looking for you to demonstrate your understanding of program requirements. Like I said earlier, the NTP, the notice to proceed, the NEPA, and that you can complete the project within the 3-year project period.
Thank you.
There's a question in the chat box about, I think, proxy locations. So for the project map, we are specifically looking for you to share where the project is taking place with an address, or if there isn't an address available, you can either use a proxy location or latitude and longitude. So if the project is taking place and it at a specific location, we're expecting that specific location. If it's more of sometimes we have programs that sort of cover a broader geography. If that program is physically taking place in a town or a county, you could use a proxy location like the town library or a county courthouse. But if that if that program is really more running out of an office, or if it's being offered at a specific location and people from the town, those surrounding towns or surrounding counties are attending a certain location, we would want to see that specific location of where a program is happening. So feels like it should be a simple answer, but the project locations are always a little nuanced. See one person typing in the box. Okay. Any other questions while we're all here? We really appreciate the time you've taken, and are looking forward to your applications coming through. But we're here in case you have questions. Okay. Oh, one more person typing. Oh, more thank yous. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'll reiterate, we do, yes, we do. You read my mind, City of Newport. I was just about to say admin@nvrc.gov. Yes, we are all actively on that inbox. So we will certainly respond as quickly as we can to any of your future questions. Okay. Well, thanks, Marina. Thanks, Casey. Thanks to everybody for participating today.
Thanks, Adrienne. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.